Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It is Thursday evening. You know what that means. Another episode of ELF Live. I am here once again for the second time this week with the man himself, Matt Bressington, one of the premier scouts and analysts of European football in the world. Matt, what's up, man? Welcome back to the show.
That's a hell of an intro. I mean, I had to, I'm just trying to be like you, man. That's what it is. I got to enunciate all my words because, I'm trying to, I'm not from Manchester. I was kind of heated about that, but.
For the people who don't know, Matt, being a lovely fellow from the United Kingdom, he receives a little bit of criticism on his lovely English accent. So we're going to be speaking as clearly as we can today. Hope you guys can understand us with our diverse English accents. What's up, guys, in the chat? Marcus, Mike, some of the OGs, the usuals. Welcome, guys. We're going to be talking ELF football. All right, Matt, this has been a dramatic week. But before we get into some of the drama that's gone down, Max, if you can pull up the slate of games that we have going into week 4. Just look at that. I always love these. Graphics. Matt, what do you think? Without getting into too much detail right now, because we're going to do that at the end of the show. We're going to do our pick'ems with all you guys in the chat. We're going to make predictions. What jumps out to you on this weekend?
I mean, in terms of if I'm doing like a one word like challenge, probably be redemption, right? There's a lot of teams with a lot going on. A lot of people to prove right or wrong about certain things, certain situations we'll get into in a minute, but and certain people trying to overcome situations from last week. It's going to be a crazy week.
Yeah, man. The storylines are developing week 4. This is turning into a soap opera of football, and we absolutely love it. So we are going to get a little nostalgic here, guys. If you've been watching the show from the beginning, from the offseason, we got a little segment called the signing center, which of course we did all through the offseason when people were signing, but we've had so much drama and roster moves this last week that we're bringing the signing center back. We're going to talk about some of these moves. I think the first one that we have to mention is the Bravos putting Chris Helbig on IR. Matt, I mean, we watched him really lead that team in the first half of the game against the Rhine Fire last week. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real big shame. He was so good. And he was a massively underrated player in Vienna as well last season. Like, people didn't give him his flowers for how good he was in that team. Right. Came out, 4 touchdowns, 0 picks, was part of the most iconic victory in ELF history, and looked incredible, like an MVP early favorite. And it was a massive thing to him go down.
I mean, that's a great point, man. And even he wasn't even getting too much hype in this offseason, even on the show. We I don't know if we overlooked him a bit, but just weren't giving him the props that I think he really deserves. So it is a damn shame that he's got to be placed on IR right there. And that is the first move in our signing center. But we go out to the East. There was kind of some perfectly timed drama here. The Panthers releasing Steven Duncan after their 16-13 loss to the Vienna Vikings last week. Keep in mind, this guy was the MVP of the league week 1, just 3 weeks ago. Matt, what are your thoughts here on this big release from the Panthers?
Man, I mean, I could go on for days about this release. I was quite heated what was going on. I'm going to be forward. I do not agree with the release. Right. Duncan was 7-4 touchdown to interception ratio. Week 1 MVP, as you said. Had a pretty poor showing last week, right? But I don't think it's entirely his fault. It's difficult, right? He's moving over to Madrid to fill in for Helbig. It's a much more comfortable situation, I think. One bad performance necessarily, and he's gone, even though he had such a good first 2 weeks. Yeah. Madrid seems so bonded. They seem so cohesive. It's such a good unit. He's got more support. Hopefully they're going to welcome him in. Seems like he's doing well there. Like, he landed like the other day and he's already all over their socials. Seems like they believe in him. And I think that's really good. Also, he's coming in with a massive chip on his shoulder now. That's incoherently good. That's going to be a really good storyline throughout the whole season.
He has got to be absolutely fired up. Yeah, it's interesting, man. I did hear some kind of rumblings early on that the Panthers weren't so thrilled about Steven Duncan, maybe in the preseason or what have you. And I don't know how much of this decision came down just to this last game, or was this something they were thinking about? And obviously he had a couple plays, didn't play great in the last game, couple plays that were poor decisions, especially with the sacks taken in the end zone that kind of really led them to end up losing that game. I think I'm with you though, man. I don't know, unless there's something, behind the scenes, or this is really something that's been in the works with the Panthers for a while. I don't think that I agree with this decision. I posted on social media a while back about the Raiders, getting rid of their quarterback after just a game or two. And it feels a little bit similar here, maybe not as severe, but not sure if I agree with this. And here we see the graphic for Steven Duncan, perfectly timing after he leaves the Panthers, getting picked right up by the Bravos. Just so you said, man, they had him on social media videos. He was there practicing with the Bravos like that night. What are you thinking, Matt? How is he going to plug right into the Bravos? Do you think he's going to be able to just step right in there and fill Chris Helbig's shoes?
Yeah. I think they're quite comparable somewhat. They're bigger dudes and more physical. They can take off if they need to. But the receiver core and the running backs, of course, of Madrid, are just so vastly underrated. Mario Flores, one of the best complementary receivers. Better than Siestro, fans of Hamburg, what he brings to the table. They've got Dwayne Obi, who was incredible last week. Their offensive line is beefed up. And the defense is just a different monster. Like that Madrid defense, one of the best in the league. So they're going to be able to give the ball back to him, which is something that Wroclaw have not struggled with, but haven't exactly been the leaders in. And I think that Duncan fits superbly into a Madrid offense. Is going to utilize his skill set tremendously.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. And then what you mentioned a little bit earlier and can't be overlooked, he's going to be out for blood on this kind of redemption rest of this season, looking to prove the Panthers wrong. And he landed in a good spot, man. So that kind of ended up working out perfectly for him. That was crazy at the start of the week when we saw that cut and then him getting signed, picked up right there. I know we were talking about that. You had a little bit of that inside info, Matt. Yeah. But this is a big one. Jeez. And then just from the chat, Super Rye 8899 says Panthers and quarterbacks is something to study. They had Lucas O'Connor and never called him back. And now this with Duncan. And then we're going to get into Urib, who they signed. He said Urib is not bad, but I think Duncan is better. Mm-hmm. So that brings us to our next signing. Obviously, the Panthers getting rid of Duncan. They're bringing in John Urib. Matt, what do we think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, he's a veteran of the game. And people forget also the Panthers released a player before they got in Matty Ice last season, like a week before. Just even more depth to the argument. But John, he's a veteran, been in the league forever. He's been with the Steel Sharks, he's been with Belgrade, he's been with the Broncos in the Swiss League. He played one game for the Panthers a couple of years back. He had a very good game. He's kind of comparable in his QBR to Javarian Smith. That's kind of what we can see balling out. They're not exactly the similar players, but Duncan is, I think, a higher ceiling player. I think John is more safe. You know what we're going to get. He's going to be accurate. He kind of hovers around that 60% for his career. Yeah. He has thrown interceptions. He does throw a good amount of touchdowns. He was very good for the Steel Sharks, but he's 33. I don't want to be ageist.
Hey, man, I was telling you before the show, I'm in my 30s, so watch it.
But a few years back, he is a Steel Sharks legend in the AFL. It's where he spent most of his career, 4 years, 90 touchdowns, which is incredible. 61% completion again, even in his best seasons, he's kind of hovering around that. Yeah. And coming in where they have Duncan, who was a week 1 MVP. He plays fine in the second game, but kind of some turnovers weren't his fault or some end of kind of drive ones. Week 3, not a great one. He's got to be feeling some kind of pressure on, like, if I have one bad week, they might be calling someone else to take my spot. It's a very uncomfortable situation to be in. He's got to build connection with his receivers. Right. Everyone's going to want the ball. He's got 2 running backs now that are going to want more carries and stuff, and they're going to be leading the offense. The offensive line aren't as emotionally invested. It's huge. It's huge. Right.
And I don't want to harp too much on the moves that teams make, but what you just said right there, John's going to have kind of this pressure in the back of his mind, like, oh, they just let go of their quarterback. I better be tip-top shape from game 1. Otherwise, I could be losing this spot. And that's the thing that I kind of referred to on social media the other week with the Raiders move is this says something to the players that you are bringing in the future. What do you think, Matt, this does for the Panthers in terms of where they go this season, kind of where they end up. Are they going to be able to find the success that they're clearly looking for with the signing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? You know, the quarterback is the most important position in all sports. And when you make it clear that you're willing to release someone who was one of the best players in the league just a couple of weeks ago, you really have to question the ambitions of whoever's in charge of that and how they think the roster is built. Were they a championship contender? I thought they were. Definitely in the preseason, one of the better built teams, one of the more underrated homegrown talents. But with this uncertainty and with this possible QB carousel we might see, they're just going to be keep falling down the power rankings. You know, they didn't beat Vienna, who had a backup quarterback in. Now they've got to play someone really difficult that we'll talk about in a minute. And it's just going to be another loss, potentially. You know, if not, they're not the favorites in this matchup, let's be honest. And are they going to move on from John after that? Are the board going to be considering that? They're going to just keep tumbling, I think, unless they really get some stability.
Yeah, and we're going to move on here in a second, but Rodney P in the chat says the Rough Panthers should have built off keeping Matthew Vitale, who went 7-2 as their starter in 2023 and built around him. Matty Ice, as they say. Yeah, we have some success there. But that's the situation with the Panthers. Crazy drama with that this week. So we got these two teams with their new quarterbacks. But we've got another team with a new quarterback headed to Austria. The Raiders signed N'Kosi Perry, who played a little bit of big-time college football at the U at Miami, coming over to Europe, to Austria, to a team that's had a good quarterback carousel themselves. Matt, what do we think of this here?
Yeah, I mean, Casey Martin was kind of known he was going to be in for one game, but 3 quarterbacks in 3 weeks that's brutal, right? And N'Kosi Perry, I'm really looking forward to seeing Perry in the league. He was a player, obviously, at Miami, as you mentioned, but he was in a very eerily similar situation to how he's coming into the Raiders. In Miami, had some accuracy issues, hovered about 55% for his best, which isn't elite. And in his college career, he was seen as always one win away from being benched. And it's basically the same situation in the Raiders. If he gets one bad mistake, he's going to be feeling that pressure. One bad mistake, and he might be gone, which is not a very comfortable situation to be in. I think that N'Kosi Perry can be successful in this league. He is a very capable runner. He's a great athlete. But it's just, you know, it's not very comfortable for him. The board are going to expect him to be Sean Shelton MVP level. Are they going to get an MVP midway through the year who's not familiar with the playbook or the receivers or anything like that? And the play call in the first 3 weeks was awful. It got a lot better in week 3, but it's a different quarterback. You know, Kaysen and N'Kosi are very different players. How are they going to adjust their playbook to a more mobile quarterback, more athletic quarterback who can take off? Maybe doesn't have the accuracy of someone like Martin. It's going to be incredibly interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, man, you mentioned it. I do think that the Raiders are suffering a little bit from the haunting of the ghost of Sean Shelton, and they are just on this carousel trying to find the next Sean Shelton. Who knows? Perry, he's got a high possible upside, super talented, but I believe this is his first time in Europe. That's always an adjustment for these quarterbacks coming over. To me, this seems a little bit like a boom or bust signing. Like it's probably not gonna be a safe, like, hey, this guy's gonna be pulling us just steadily along, like how I think maybe the Vikings quarterback will be, who we'll talk about in a second. So either this is gonna be big hit or a disaster, in my opinion. With moving to another quarterback, the Raiders, this is some wild stuff here. Absolutely. But got another one in Austria, the other Austrian team, the Vienna Vikings, with Ben Holmes out and them playing with Austrian native last week and getting the W. The Vikings have signed Sheldon Epler to fill in for Ben Holmes. Now, we do know that Ben Holmes is still the guy. He talked to Coach Kalaika, said this is just temporary, but Sheldon Epler stepping in to fill in for the Vikings. What are your thoughts on this one, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, here's a scout report on Epler. I've done my research. He's a Mexican League legend, right? He's played multiple years. He's an MVP. He's an All-Pro. He's got 3 passing leaders under his belt, most touchdowns of the season. He's completed Mexico. He's very poised in the pocket. He waits for openings. He's good under pressure. He's an accuracy guy. He is a very his ELF comparison is Ben Holmes. Like he looks, they're
Yes.
very similar guys. When I'm doing comparisons between players in different leagues and whatnot, they're very, very, 1A, 1B. I think they're very similar. I think that he's going to be able to move into this offense seamlessly. I think that he has the best chance to be successful in all of the new quarterbacks coming in, just because he's a carbon copy of the guy they've already got in. And he's had great success, of course. In terms of his negatives, a long release. I think that might play into it. It's a very long throwing mechanic. Maybe not the arm to get into some tight spaces that he might need to when he's playing some really tough defenses. He's going to need to slot that ball in. That's the scout report. He's poised, accuracy guy, but maybe lacks a bit of a top level arm.
Interesting here. And just checking out the chat, ELFpedia is referring to when I said with Perry possibly being a boom or a bust signing. He says, isn't every quarterback signing in this league like a boom or bust signing? Matt, I want to get your thoughts on that in a second. I'm going to say no. I don't think that every single one is sort of a big boom or bust signing. I think there are certain quarterbacks here in Europe that have a proven track record. They've been in the European football ecosystem, whether it's in the ELF or other national leagues. And I think that is a huge plus with signing sort of a European veteran quarterback, and that makes it a little bit less a boom or bust. You know a little bit more of what you're getting. So that would be my response to that. Matt, what do you think on that?
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say about it's not all about how they play football. It's also about how they transition to Europe. It's a culture shock for a lot of these guys, As you know, the quarterbacks don't always transition well to European life. And we know the people like Jadrian or Edwards or, Chad Jeffries, who have been in the league for years and multiple other leagues in Europe, and they've transitioned well. They've proved they can do it. They're not boom or bust. If Jadrian went somewhere else or Edwards or Chad went somewhere else, we know they're going to be able to perform. Yeah. It's the guys that come in first year ever outside of America, like Nkosi. That's the ones that have more of a question mark about them.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very well put. And so that's what we kind of mean by the not so much of a boom or bust on certain signings. But there we have it with the quarterbacks. A lot of quarterback movements. Both Austrian teams, the Austrian rivals, got new quarterbacks. We're going to see how these guys perform. And then in our signing center, we have got the extinction of a certain position. Patrick Carr has been released by the Milano Seamen. He was the one and only, the lone American running back playing in this league 2024. We talked about it quite a bit, Matt, kind of for weeks, how we don't think having an American running back is a smart move in this league in this day and age. The Seamen seem to finally realize that. And nothing against Patrick Carr. He's a fantastic athlete, fantastic running back. It just doesn't really work in this league. It's not worth it. And so I actually think this is a very smart move by the Seamen, step in the right direction. Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if you're going to have a running back, he needs to be essentially a wide receiver at the same time. He cannot have most of his snaps behind the line of scrimmage. Patrick averaged 1 yard a carry. Whether you want to put that to his offensive line or to the offensive play calling, both of which need to be called into question, is still 1 yard a carry. 36 yards for a guy that bring it, A's are so valuable to a team. They make or break it. I know a lot of people talk about homegrowns, that's true as well. But if you don't land on the A's, it can make you from a bad team to a really good team. And not to say that he was a bad player. I'm sure, like you said, he was a great athlete. Just when you don't have the elite offensive line that Italy could have, they got people like Roncoda, Adachi, Vergani. Those are all excellent players that are not on that Milano team. So when you lose the homegrowns and try and replace it with ease, you may be losing quality on that line. Running backs aren't going to work unless they're spread out wide, catching footballs like a McCaffrey, or for a European comparison like Tommy Awaywo, like someone who can contribute on multiple levels, even as a returner or a blocker. They need to be able to do more than just run the rock.
Yeah, 100%, man. And then just looking at the chat here, ELFpedia again says Adams is an American running back. Kennedy Adams, who used to be an American running back. The point is here, he doesn't count. He doesn't count as an American.
He also receives out the backfield. He's got multiple receiving touchdowns this year.
He's more. Yeah, he's more out of the backfield this year. He's not. David Brzozowski still taking the bulk of the carries and up there with rush yards. But yeah, that is the situation. Milano Seamen finally coming around to what I think a lot of people have been saying, and it'll be very interesting to see who they grab to fill that second A spot. Obviously, they're coming off the win from last week. Maybe they can build a little bit of momentum, stepping in the right direction. And yeah, that's So tough for a guy like Patrick who's come over here. It's probably his first, experience in Italy and with European football world, but unfortunately just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Matt, we now have a very fun segment. This is going to be very, very interesting. So as you guys know, Tim Hansverlemenke puts out his ELF power rankings every week. It is always a dramatic post on the ELF Instagram. The comments are hot, gets fiery. People agree, people disagree. And we're going to take a look here at Tim's power rankings. And then you guys are going to be subject to mine and Matt's power rankings as well. In the chat, feel free to criticize or approve of the choices and everything here. So first, let's take a look at Tim's power ranking. Let's start here at the bottom, of course. Let's just look at the first. Let's go the bottom three: Helvetic, Milano, Barcelona. Matt, what do you think right here? And without giving away maybe too much of what your picks are yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is slightly harsh on the Dragons and Seamen, considering they do have a win. Granted, it's against lower competition, but they both have a win against the Mercenaries. I don't think anyone's going to question the Mercenaries being last, but those two do have a win, and the Enthroners were a bit above them don't. So that would be one of the things I would notice in that bottom section.
Sure. Yep. And then how about then as we come up, you got the Enthroners, Prague, two of the lower teams in the East. Yeah, would do you think that this is proper ordering here with these two?
I would probably lower them both, considering the wins. Prague have looked worse as the weeks have gone on. The Enthroners, injuries at Mangle, and a couple of key positions. So I'd probably put them a little bit lower as well. That would be what I would call.
It's interesting. We haven't heard anything about the Enthroners getting or making any new quarterback signings. So hopefully that's just a small injury with Mangle. I like to kind of think about the power rankings in terms of tiers because we've got such it's tough to really do distinct rankings, but it is easier to kind of clump teams into tiers. And I think this next tier here, these two teams to me are in a tier together, and it's Cologne and the Sea Devils, two of the kind of least lower successful German teams, but with a little bit of promise. What do you think about these spots here, man?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the segments. I completely agree. I do exactly the same thing. I call this the lower mid, right?
There we go.
And it's kind of both of them are very similar teams in what they are. And I actually think that's going to be one of the more exciting matchups because it's German teams. Who's the worst German team is quite, I imagine none of them really won that title.
No.
So those two, I think, go back and forth. I think you could put them both 1-1. Both have had drubbins, as we call in the UK.
Yeah.
But, we'll see how they kind of match up later in the weeks.
Lower mid. I like that. I like that a lot. It'll be very interesting. I'm curious to see them playing. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Maxie has put up our power rankings here. So sorry, Tim, we're not going to keep going through yours. If you guys want to leave your comments on Instagram for Tim's power rankings, but now it's time for ours. As we got now, guys, feel free to be harsh. I'll start off with my bottom, and I am suffering. Listen, guys, I'm here with Matt Bressington. Okay, he's one of the premier scouts and analysts, and I'm a guy that's going off a lot of emotion here. Okay, I'm not having all that beautiful analytics that Matt has got, and I'm suffering from a little bit of recency bias, which is why I've got Barcelona at the bottom after that absolute beating by the Raiders. I think it feels like they're headed in the wrong direction. I know they have a win. I know they beat Helvetic. But to me, that's the pinnacle of what they're going to do this season, and they're not looking good, and they're heading in the wrong direction. That's why I got Barcelona at the bottom. Matt, who you got, and what do you think?
I got the Mercenaries at bottom. Barcelona did get mangled. Don't get me wrong. But the Mercenaries also got mangled, and I feel like they have less talent on the field than Barcelona. And they've not utilized talent, and both offensive lines are horrible. We're going to get a rematch this weekend anyway. So we'll see who kind of comes out of this and who kind of raises up one or two. Because I think realistically, both of them are last. None of them are moving into that upper echelon. Both are going to just switch between those two for the whole year, I think.
It's actually going to be a good game. I'm really excited for that game here. I mean, we're talking right now, we're sort of in the lowest tier, in my opinion, of these teams. And in the chat, ELFpedia says, nah, they're better than the Mercenaries. And Just Shot says worst right now is the Mercenaries. We'll see. Next for me in this lower tier, maybe we'll go two at a time. The next two for me are Prague and Fehervar. A lot of people might think that these two teams, I think, would be. It makes sense for them to be clumped kind of together. I think some people would have them a little bit higher, maybe higher than Milan or so. But I think that these two teams just really bringing up the bottom, and not if they were to play some of these Central Conference bottom end teams, I think that the Central Conference teams would pull out ahead. So that's why I've got these two down here. Matt?
Yeah, I agree. I've gone for exactly the same, the other way around in Throners.
Okay.
Like they're bad. All of these guys struggled offensive line. All of them struggled to get offense moving. And they've conceded a bunch of points. They're all kind of, you could kind of interchange all of them. And I don't think anyone's going to be too mad.
Yeah, for sure. There we go. All right. Now our only big difference is the Mercenary Dragon situation here. All right. Now the next two for me, I have got the lower end of the Central Conference, the Helvetic Mercenaries and the Milano Seamen. Milano, obviously, they got their win. They beat the Helvetic Mercenaries, but it was kind of a close game. Not too exciting to watch, a little bit ugly at times, but it ended up being competitive. And that's why I've got Helvetic right below them. I think if Helvetic was able to put together even just a tiny bit of offense, then they could have possibly won that game. But these two teams, in Milano, they're moving in the right direction with releasing Carr and hopefully getting a American wide receiver. And, I think they're kind of at the top of this bottom tier. What we got?
That's fair. I've got the Milano Seamen and I've got the Dragons. Seamen, they haven't announced an A yet, and the deadline's gone. So that's a concern. And they do have a good defense. That's why they're higher up. They've just, they've got a solid defense. They got Sands we didn't talk about just yet, but they're looking good. The Dragons did just get absolutely destroyed. But again, I like what they have in terms of some talent and positions. Kada Dadisa, of course, very vocal about how much I like him. David at receiver. Levi Lewis can make plays when he's got less than, or a little bit more than 0.1 of a second to throw the ball, but that's how I'm going to have it.
Yeah, that'll help, having just a little bit more than a 10 seconds to throw the football. All right, so I think a lot of people would agree this is the bottom echelon. This is the bottom tier of our teams in the league as of right now. Our biggest discrepancy here, Matt, is you and me with Barcelona. And like I said, I'm probably suffering from some pretty bad recency bias, which is why I've got them pretty low. But now moving up to what'd you call them, the lower mid?
Lower mid, yeah.
Lower mid. Okay. For me, the lower mid is Cologne and then Hamburg. But I do think that they're a little bit interesting. I do think that it would be possible for either of these teams to sneak in a win against maybe a top 10 team on any given weekends. Cologne is moving in the right direction, in my opinion. When they played the Rhine Fire, they didn't look terrible. There were some good things there. In sort of a similar situation for Hamburg. They got the win against Prague. That was an exciting way to start the season. Not great. Lower mid is a great way of describing them, but I think there's definitely improvements over our low tier teams. That's why we've got them in the lower mid. Matt, who's your next two?
Exactly the same.
Oh,
there we go. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. They're similar styles. We haven't seen Jarvis hit full gear yet. I think that he will. We haven't seen Centurions with Weddington hit full gear yet. They're very comparable teams, both run-centric with a good amount of running backs, a solid defense, and both got beaten by teams in the upper tiers.
I'm feeling pretty good right now that my power ranking is sort of matching with one of the top ELF analysts, guys. You have no idea how excited I am that my list is not complete nonsense, at least yet. We'll see what happens in the top 10. Yeah. All right. So we got some similarities there. I think a lot of people would agree. You can switch a couple of these teams around, but in general, this is sort of the bottom chunk of the teams. This is where it gets incredibly interesting. The top 10 teams in this league. It's very, very competitive. It can switch around, and I think a lot of people are going to have different opinions on these. Any of these teams could be playoff teams. And I think, Matt, should we go one at a time now in the top 10?
Let's go for it.
Let's go one at a time. For me, I've got the Panthers.
Ooh.
Yeah. And okay. I'll tell you what, they would be higher. Their two losses are against good teams, right? Against good teams, the Surge and the Vikings. maybe some might say two of the top teams. If they didn't release their quarterback and cause all this quarterback nonsense, maybe I won't call it nonsense. We'll call it drama. Okay. I'm not going to call it nonsense. We'll call it drama. They didn't create all this quarterback drama, getting in a new quarterback and not just riding out Stephen Duncan had a bad game, made some bad decisions. I probably would have had him higher, but I think that this rotation will hurt them, at least in the short run, to kind of get John Uribe in there and get team cohesion and everything. So that's why I've got them at 10. Who do you got, Matt?
I mean, fair enough. I've got Berlin Thunder.
Yep.
Have they ever been above like 8 in this league? They kind of just yo-yo. They've got amazing players all over the field. Kyle Kitchens is having another Kyle Kitchens-esque year. They've had Aaron Grossman-Klein, who's looking phenomenal as a young player off the defensive line to relieve some pressure. Emil Forster, Ludwig Meyer, go on forever about that defense. Yeah. Sullivan has also looked improved. They just haven't got like a statement win yet. I think this is a big thing. They're 1-1, I believe. They come off a bye week. They need like a big win against someone in the top 10, and then they'll probably move up. But they're kind of in purgatory at the moment. That's
such a great way of describing them. They're in purgatory. I think that there's still, to me, I want to see more, but I think that there's potential there. I was talking to some coaches around the league, asking them kind of to give their power ranking so I can get a little sense of how people feel. Some people had them up at 5 or 6, wow. Sorry, like as high as 6. And so I think that there's kind of a broad range for what Berlin could be placed at. Yeah. For me, moving up to 9, I have got Raiders T-Roll. Making some moves. Obviously, they got the new quarterback, N'Kosi Perry. Very curious to see how he comes in here and steps in here. Coming off the big win against the Dragons, where they did look good. Obviously, they're playing against a weaker team, but it wasn't just that they were beaten up on a low-end team, but they actually clicked on some things and were looking good. Matt, I think you've been talking about their play calling has been looking a little bit better. And I am absolutely violently curious to see them play the Munich Ravens this weekend. We'll do our pick'ems after this. And I think that will decide a lot of stuff. But again, in these kind of 10 through 5, I think you could really interchange a lot of these teams. But for me right now, I've got T-Roll Raiders at 9. Matt, who do we got?
We got the Raiders Tyrrell, of course.
Oh my God.
Snapping on that one. I agree. I loved your the violently intrigued.
Violently curious.
People that I've spoken to that are fans of the organization are like, yeah, no, championship. Nah. And like, I'm going to be real. I don't see the Raiders winning a championship anytime soon. They do have great Austrian talent. Their offensive line doesn't look good enough, though. But we did see the emergence of some of the younger guys come through in the last game. And of course, that's my background is scouting guys from the high school circuit all the way up to recording and through the pros. Tim Tonko is a phenomenal running back. He's going to be the next Bonatti. He is my comparison. He came through in a big way last game. You got Michael Schneider. You got Philip Hahn that could make an impact. It's just whether or not they can get the ball to these guys and whether or not the drops can be reduced, because that's a big thing. Chafin's dropping more than 50% of the balls. It needs to increase. Otherwise, they're not going to raise up to 8.
Wow, that's the stat. More than 50%.
Yeah, man.
Not good. Not good.
No.
Let's hope for their sake that he does. Now, you called Cologne and Hamburg sort of the lower mid. I would call T-Roll maybe touching the upper mid for me. Yeah. I would say that we're starting in the upper mid category.
Yeah.
I like making these categories. For me, next, I've got Berlin. I think that the Jacob Solomon move ended up, at least what I've seen so far, ended up being a good move. He looks pretty good. Of course, he's thrown a couple picks, but he's leading the league in passing yards right now. Their loss to the Panthers in the opening game, they still put up a lot of points. And this is a team, you just said, they got a lot of talent. Of course, Kyle Kitchens, one of the most underrated DBs in the league, in my opinion. Alex Spillum, yes. Absolute baller. And so Berlin is a team right there that could be possibly making the playoffs if things continue to go well and they can pick up some of these wins. Who are they playing this weekend? Are they playing the Panthers?
Can't remember. We'll see in a minute.
We'll see in a minute. I think they're playing the Panthers, and if so, that'll be a real defining game. The rematch with them. Matt, who do you got today?
I got the Galaxy.
Aha!
Yeah. Winless. Okay. They're winless, bro. Like you can only really be so high when you're 2 games into your season. You haven't won one of them. You know, they lost in a heartbreaker to Paris with the missed field goals. Luke, although I do think is a good quarterback, has thrown interceptions on both of those games that have kind of led to they were kind of like close, and then those interceptions happened, and then they were out of the game. They're not looking great. The front seven, of course, is being susceptible to a lot of big run plays. Glenn tore him apart. We had Denmark Heath coming in at running back and giving them a big problem. It's hard to really put them anywhere above 8 when they haven't won a game yet.
That's a great point, man. It's a great point. And just to continue with them, I've got them at 7, which, it's sneaking in there a little bit past 8. But I think that's the point, is they have not won a game. Granted, their losses are against 2 of the better teams in the league, the Rhine Fire, and a team I know you love, Matt, from your YouTube video, Paris Musketeers. Those are their losses, and they're close losses. I mean, if you look at the game last week, Frankfurt kind of let it go. They could have won. They had chances to win, obviously, with the missed field goals and a lot of sloppy play. They were still in it, and they could have come away with the win. They very easily could be 1-1. I don't think that they really had a chance to beat the Rhine Fire, although they looked solid against them. But that's why I got Frankfurt, sort of in the same range as you. The highest that we should ever be ranking a winless team, probably. Though.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. At 7, I've got Panthers, because Uribe is a solid quarterback who can fit into a system. He has 2 great running backs in Zozo and Adams. He has 3 good receivers in like Catspot and Mazin and Benat and Andrea Botello Moreno. Like, he has weapons.
Yeah.
So if he's not able to come in and do some damage, it'll be a very big cause of concern, of course, defensively. And without even talking about the O-line, which has more of them, and Keanu, who are great in their own right. And then defensively, AJ Wetland, they've just got back William James, who create turnovers. They do still have a very good roster. And do I think they were very premature? Yes. But they do still have the talent to win games.
That's actually a good point, and a thing that I kind of didn't necessarily consider when making my rankings. I forgot that Yuri played a game or 2 for them, didn't he?
Yeah, he played 1 game, got 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. I think got 60% accuracy. Can't remember who it was against, but he looked good.
Yeah, so maybe that kind of transition and plug-in will be a little bit less extreme, just because he has a little bit of history with the franchise. But yeah, man, I mean, I think any of these games in this 10 through 6, these teams could go either way at any time. What do we got here? Moving in next is number 6 for me, Munich Ravens. Munich Ravens were a team that had, I don't know if I want to say like top 3, but maybe top 5 hype coming into the year. Came out with a dud, of course, with the Surge, but have since beat up on 2 of the weaker teams, with the Prague Lions and the Milano Seamen. Good wins, solid wins. I mean, absolutely dominant wins. Got them at 6 here because I think that they performed a little bit worse than they actually are against the Surge. They looked solid against the weaker teams, but I need to see them play a team of a little bit higher caliber and have that kind of performance against one of these teams. We talked about the T-Roll Raiders as being maybe upper mid. This will be a real defining game between the Munich Ravens and the T-Roll Raiders this weekend. But I think that, they've got still Chad Jeffries, and they have done a lot of things to position themselves to be competing with the Stuttgart Surge in the Central Conference. For me, I've got them at 6 right now. Very curious to see when they're playing a little bit better teams. What do we got, Matt?
I mean, exactly the same. Ravens, once again, I agree completely. They haven't got a statement win like I talked about with Berlin. They got shredded against Surge. I don't think it was accurate because their offensive line were really bad in that game. But then they picked up these momentum-building wins, like you said. And I think going into this game, they're a bit more confident. They don't want to be too overconfident given the QB situation. But I think they're going to treat this very seriously. And they do still have an incredible amount of talent. We saw the receivers and Marvin Rush come in last game, perform exactly how we expected them to a couple of weeks back. So they're starting to, the gears are turning, I think, in Munich.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we've got now the top 5. But before we do that, we have a word from the Ninja Woodfire Outdoor Grill.
Zeit im Freien mit der Ninja Woodfire Family. Bessere Partys mit Pizza unter 3 Minuten. Freie Tage genießen mit Gerichten, die mit bis zu 370 Grad geröstet wurden. Bessere Wochenenden mit authentischen Smoker. Bessere Campingausflüge dank gegrillten und frittierten Leckereien. Turniertage werden besser mit gesmokten Grillwürsten. Grillabende besser nutzen dank der App-Steuerung. Draußen wird besser mit Ninja.
Man, that pizza coming out of that grill looked great. Made me hungry. I'm about to have dinner right after this. Ninja Woodfire electric outdoor oven. All right, top 5, Matt. Our top 5s, power rankings heading into week 4. For me, number 5, I've got the team that was at the top of the league for 16 weeks straight. The reigning champions, Rhein Fire, who suffered a pretty brutal loss to newcomer Madrid Bravos. This was a big shock. The Bravos storming on the scene. Rhein Fire, I still think that they're trying to figure out their 2024 self. Last year they had so many weapons and losing guys, like Mahongu, and now they're trying to figure out and replace what their receiving core looks like. Kofi didn't play. They're kind of damaged by injuries right now, so they're really trying to click and be their 2024 self. I still think that they've got great potential, and they're still one of the best teams in the league. I might even be overreacting a little bit by having them all the way down at 5. And then perhaps, again, recency bias, seeing that kind of brutal loss, ugly loss to the Bravos. But Rhein Fire at 5, although I do still think that they'll find themselves and get that click going and be one of the best teams in the second half of the season. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, exactly the same. We're on a streak, 2 streaks.
Oh, there we go.
The Brian Winter gone on IR is huge. I'm really devastated because he's such a good receiver that's coming out of the scene from the NFL Academy. They've went for Falola on the defense. So for me, this is a transitional era. They're stacking that defense against Paris. They're saying the offense is covering through injuries, and we are depleted at the receiver position. Let's just not let teams score any points. And they've got Falola in. Incredible athlete. If you don't know how good Falola is an athlete, he's a linebacker with a 39-inch vertical. That's all I really need to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, I like that. I think that's a great way of putting it. Like, hey, we're kind of banged up. We're down a receiver. We're going to ride this out, and we're just going to bolster up our defense, get through these games with playing good defense. Interesting. Yeah, and people in the chat, Fourth Down Fiasco says, Rhein Fire at 5? Yes. SB123 Fire versus Paris will be a big game. That's one this week, and we're excited about. Now, number 4, of course, got to be the team that beat them. The Madrid Bravos. Man, I mean, this has been a talk of the town all week. Obviously, we talked about Chris Helbig, unfortunately now on the IR, but Willie Patterson just playing inspired against his former team, and he played a huge role in that Rhein Fire defeat. Madrid Bravos, they've just got an energy, man. That this is a franchise that has come onto the scene of European football doing a lot of stuff right, from off the field to roster building to on the field to coaching and players that they've got. And they've really proved that they're the real deal. Obviously, they opened up who they beat in their first game, Hamburg. Was it Hamburg? No, sorry, Barcelona. They beat Barcelona in their opening game, smashed them. But then this was the test to see if they're the real deal, and they are the real deal. Madrid Bravos are a legitimate top 5 team in this league right now. And we'll see how Steven Duncan fits in there, if they can continue on this momentum. But I'm a fan of the franchise.
I think me and you spend too much time together, Nick, because I've also got the Bravos at 4.
Maybe we just have really good analysis.
I think that's what it is. The QB questions, it's a short week to adjust to a playbook. It's going to be a shortened up playbook, which is natural. They are a great team, stacked all over. Now, that defense is phenomenal, and it's not talked about enough as one of the elite defenses in the league. Weapons at receiver, running back, we saw how good all those were. I talked about them earlier, how stacked they were at every position. And, yeah, I just couldn't agree with you more.
All right, Matt, I think that we're going to disagree here on this next one. I hope. So we have a little bit of something, a little bit.
Yeah.
For me, I've got what I believe is your favorite team right now, the Paris Musketeers at 3. Now, it's very impressive that the teams in the top 5, 2 of these top 5 teams are new franchises. Paris last year and Madrid this year, coming on and showing that when done well, you can have an ELF franchise, a young ELF franchise that performs at a high level. Paris, obviously, they're just disgustingly talented, absolutely disgustingly talented. They're the ones who I was thinking of, who beat Hamburg. And then I wanted to see a little bit of a more kind of statement win. And they beat Frankfurt, which was huge. It was very, very big, although could have gone the other way. It really could have gone the other way. And so a part of me, while I am very impressed with Paris getting that win, I do feel like they did escape a little bit with that win, which is why I've got them at 3 and not higher, because one could argue that they have the most talent in the league, perhaps. They're definitely moving in the right direction. Huge game this weekend against the Rhine Fire. If they beat the Rhine Fire, they might have to pop up to 1 for me. But right now I've got Paris at 3. Matt, who do we got?
I mean, I've got Vienna at 3, so we disagree on there.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, QB situation, Abla short week playbook, same thing as I said about Madrid. It's basically the same situation. 2 extremely talented teams, great receivers, obviously, of course, everywhere on that Vienna team. Like you say, disgustingly talented. It's copy and paste exactly what I said about the Bravos and put it on the Vikings. It's the same situation.
100%. I mean, Vienna, of course, going with they got a little bit of quarterback adversity right now. Max, you can put up my number 2 is Matt's number 3, the Vienna Vikings. I was very, very impressed with their win against the Panthers last week. I talked about it on Monday, how that was sort of a testament to the culture that Coach Kalaikai has established with that franchise. This is a guy who's had success there for 20 years. And there's probably not too many teams or coaching staffs in Europe that can lose their starting quarterback, plug in a homegrown at quarterback, and still come away with a win against what many people consider a top 10 team in the league on the road. And Vienna is able to do that. Their defense playing absolutely lights out. The only reason that I don't have them at 1 just, is they haven't really been able to turn it on offensively. And part of that's due to injuries, but I haven't been overly impressed with them offensively. I have been overly impressed with them defensively.
Yes.
But for now, we're at 2. We're going to see how Sheldon Epler steps in and what the situation is like when Ben Holmes returns. Number 2 for me. Matt, who do you got?
I mean, I have the Surge, which is different, very different. But just touching that Vienna defense, that's outstanding. They got so many great players. Talking to Hunter Nichols about it today. But with the Surge being at 2, they've lost Darryl Stewart, who me and you both acknowledge are one of the best receivers in the league. They've got Damon Hazleton, who's a very similar guy, and he's a very lengthy, deep threat. He can restretch the field, which was they've missed. He's a sideline receiver. He's not coming inside routes. He's going to provide a little bit more spacing for them, I think, offensively. But they're also coming off a bye week, and I'm very much, what have you done for me lately? And they didn't play, so therefore they are not going to raise or fall. They're just going to stay exactly where they were. I got Surge at 2.
Yeah, I mean, fair. What have you done for me lately? They were off chilling. They did nothing. They didn't show us anything. I, of course, due to my insane Surge bias. No, I'm actually trying to be really objective here. I've got the Surge at number 1, and this is not because I'm connected to the team in any way, shape, or form. I just think that right now they're the most complete team from coaching staff on down, offensively, defensively, even special teams. We talked about how the kicking game throughout the league has been not great. Well, the Surge have been pretty solid with their special teams and kicking game with Lenny Krieg. And of course, Darryl Stewart Jr. out right now, but the Surge are a team who are really good with the next man up mentality. I know those coaches have set that culture insanely well. I was also, just as I was impressed with the Vikings going on the road and beating the Panthers, I was also impressed with the Surge going on the road and beating the Panthers from a 14-hour bus trip where they slept overnight on the bus. And you saw that they started out that game with some adversity. A lot of adversity. It was very sloppy, but they were able to settle in and really show that, this is a complete team. And to be able to even win a sloppy game like that against a good team, it's, very impressive to me. I think that we've got to have them at the number 1 spot right now. And that's why I've got the Surge up top.
Yeah. I mean, I've got Paris myself. I think that the big thing of why Surge are number 1 is they're without both of their A's on the spots. They've got new guys coming in. I do think that Marko Vidakovic, I'm probably butchering the name, is a phenomenal player coming in from Oregon as a homegrown player. But with Paris, you look at all the rest of that top 7, they all have to split the amount of homegrown talents they have with other teams within their country. Paris do not have to do that, and Paris are one of the best they've unbelievable homegrown talent out of Paris everywhere. every position is elite level. You know, Digan Gomez, you've got Mamadou Sai, who deserves a lot of praise. Marcelo Beard, that's just the 3 levels. At receiver, you got Anti Mahonwu, you know, like they're one of the very few teams, I think, here, the UK and France and Germany, if they had one collected team, could compete with just homegrowns. I think it's just those ones. And man, Paris, they did look good. They scraped the win, but they still won, and that's the only thing that matters.
That is a very, very good point about them being able to have all of their country's homegrown talent. It's damn near a national team with imports on it. In Germany, who also has great homegrown talent, that's split among these top teams. It's a really good point, one that I actually haven't even consciously thought about often. So that's a very fair argument there. We got in the chat, Alex Malchow, one of our other co-hosts. He says Paris at number 1 is wild. Woo! Hey, but that's what we got, guys. That is our power rankings for week 4. Alex agrees with me, Serge, at number 1. Hey, I like it. I think it's good that we got to disagree on some of them, Matt.
Sure. We're getting too many alignments.
Too many alignments. I'm proud of myself for matching up with you on a good amount there with all the scouting and film watching that you do. Good for me. All right. Now, to wrap up the show, guys, of course, we have got to do our pick'ems for this week. We got an exciting slate of games. I know I say that often, but I'm serious. I'm serious. 6 of these games are fantastic probably this weekend. We're starting off at the one that we were mentioning, Western Conference heavyweight showdown, Rhein Fire and Paris Musketeers. Whoa, look at that with the 77% of people leaning towards Fire. Matt, who do you got in this one?
I mean, that's interesting. I'm surprised it's that heavily one way. To be honest, you asked me in 5 minutes, I'll probably have a different answer for you. But I'm leaning towards Paris just because of they're more healthy at the moment on their full roster. I think I'm going to go for the Musketeers on this one.
Yeah, this one's also really, really tough. You can kind of go either way. And I'm same here. I might switch my pick right after the show. But right now, I'm going to go with the Rhein Fire as a sort of redemption game. They had to hear all week how Rhein Fire are done. The era's over. They got beat by Madrid. And I feel like we kind of overreacted maybe a little bit this week on moving them all down. I know I just did it by putting them at number 5, but this is now. That was then. And so I'm actually going to go with the Rhein Fire in what I think could be an incredible game. And it will kick off the weekend for us. So there we go. We're split. That's good, Matt. That's good when we split.
Yeah, nice. I like
that. That's good. We get a little competition. Next one, interesting. The Hot Bravos versus the Cologne Centurions. This one's pretty one-sided with the fan picks so far, 82%. Matt, who do you got on this one?
I'm going to have to go with the fans with the Bravos on this one. I think they're coming to come out. I think they're going to dominate from start to finish. They have a really good run defense, which is kind of Cologne's thing. And I think it's going to be quite a convincing win for them.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I go Bravos. I like that this is for the Bravos, for Stephen Duncan's first game with the team. This is against one of your lower mid teams. So maybe I don't know if I would call it like a tune-up game, but the fact that they don't have to go against an elite team in this first game for Stephen Duncan, that's pretty solid to get him acclimated. I'm with you. We got Bravos. We are with the majority of the fans there. Now this next one, interesting Eastern Conference showdown, Berlin Thunder and the Vienna Vikings. That's pretty one-sided there, Matt. Are you a little surprised by how heavily favored the Vikings are?
I am. Yeah, I am. I do think I'm going to go for the Vikings to win because of that defense. But I don't think it's going to be like an 80-20%, like that's how dominant they're going to be. I think it'll be a lot closer. But I'm still going to go for Vienna, though.
Yeah, man. Should I go with the upsets?
Oh, do it.
do it, man. I don't know. I just talked about how amazing Vienna's defense is. Will Sheldon Epler be able to do it? I mean, they were able to pull out the win with Reichel. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a great game. I don't think the 80-20 split that we see right now is indicative of what it will actually be. I think it'll be closer than that, but I'm with you, Matt. I'm going Vienna Vikings. It'll be a good one, though. That's another good matchup.
Great game.
And doesn't have to always be at the very top of the league, two teams, to be an exciting game. This one, Barcelona and Helvetic Mercenaries, I think will be a very exciting one, a close one. So far, the closest one, and according to the fans. Matt, who do you got?
That's a battle for who wants to be not bottom. You know what I mean? It's a long-winded name, but it's catchy. Man, again, you could probably ask me this in 5 minutes. I'll probably change my answer. But I think the fan base have got it kind of around. I'm going to go for the Mercenaries, though. I think we're going to split the series. I'm going to go against the fans 1-1. Barcelona coming off a massive loss. So.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm with you, man. I'm with the Mercenaries. Barcelona, to me, not going really in the right direction. Mercenaries, they just came off not a pretty, but a competitive game, at least.
Yeah.
Barcelona wasn't even in the realm of competition in that last game. Mercenaries really, I think, will be motivated to split the series after losing to Barcelona in the opening week. I'm with you right here. We're Mercenaries.
Nice.
Let's see, Matt. Let's see if we can split on this next one. Panthers and the Galaxy. Man, the poor Panthers have such a tough schedule.
Yeah, they do.
They pulled 2 out-of-conference opponents to Surge in the Galaxy. That's brutal. Who do you got here?
I mean, Silas got involved in the Mercenaries one, so I'm assuming he's back here from
Oh,
he is at. But for the Panthers, and again, that's a really surprising split for the Galaxy favor. But do I want to go for the upset? I think I kind of do. I feel like they're just going to run them. They saw what Tonga did.
Yeah.
They're going to replicate that. I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to go for the Rotterdam Panthers to win that one.
I like it, man. Despite the drama, like you said, they still have a fantastic roster. Maybe Uribe steps in here and is everything that they are hoping out there in Wroclaw for this organization. God, this is another one that's, I think, going to be a great game. But I do think that the Galaxy pick up their first win. I think it's a great one. I think that they finally get their first win, hopefully clean up some of the stuff from last week, and really start to deserve that number 7, 8 spot by having at least one win. I'm going with Galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, fair. That's fair. It's a good choice.
Here we go. The probably least interesting game of the week. It's the one that I will be attending. We got the Milano Seamen and the Stuttgart Surge. You see here what the fans are saying. Shout out to the 1% of fans who are going with the Seamen. But Matt, tell me your controversial opinion on this one.
I mean, nothing controversial in terms of the result of who's going to win, but I'm going to go for Surge, and I'm also going to put my neck out there and favor them by 50. It might be brave, but I'm going to favor them by 50. I'm good at making these score predictions. You
called last week for Berlin to beat Fehervar by 40, and they did literally exactly that.
Exactly the same thing. We're going to get a 50 plus here.
There we go. All right. I'm also obviously going with the Surge, and Malchow says Seaman. Oh, he wrote again. Will lose. He was being funny. Okay, Alex. Now, oh, man, we got good games. This next one, Central Conference matchup, sort of the upper mid, perhaps, of what I would call. We got the Munich Ravens and the Raiders T-Roll. This one, another one that's I'm a little surprised by the huge split. What do you say here, Matt?
I think the Munich Ravens defense has kind of gone under the radar. That's what I'm going to say. They've got 2 great corners in Netzlander, and they've got Darius and Robinson, who are 2 great turnover creators. They've got very underrated defensive line. And given the Raiders' situationship they've got going on with their quarterback position, I'm going to have to go with the Ravens to win this one. I think it'll be relatively comfortable for them, just given they're a lot more stable and they've got a lot more momentum.
I'm feeling controversial. I'm feeling controversial, Matt. I think, I got the Ravens higher on my power ranking. Something's going to go down. The Raiders got N'Kosi Perry coming in. And even if he doesn't end up being super solid throughout the year, I think he's going to have a splashy debut. And I think he's going to lead them to victory over the Ravens. This is my wild, controversial pick. N'Kosi Perry balls out, and they beat the Ravens. So, man, you gotta take some chances, man. You gotta put yourself out there,
I think he's gonna throw a pick.
We'll probably throw a pick. He'll throw a couple touchdowns, hopefully.
Nice.
And then lastly, we've got the Prague Lions and the Hamburg Sea Devils. The rematch. Hamburg beat them in week 1. Who we got here, Matt?
It was a weird game now we won because, the Sea Devils didn't look entirely comfortable throughout.
Oh,
I'm building it up, but I'm absolutely not going to go for an upset. I'm still going to go for the Sea Devils to win it. I think it'll be a little bit more distant this time, but another kind of comfortable 14+ kind of victory.
yeah. I got to go with the Sea Devils as well. I ran out of controversy and bold picks with that Raiders T-roll one, but that's good, man. We ended up splitting on 1, 2, 3. We got 3 that were split on. That's exciting. That's fun. So we'll see who ends up looking really smart this weekend. Yeah.
That's always a go, isn't it?
There we go. Guys, that's what we got. That's our show today. Matt, that was a great one, man. That's fun.
As always, man. We're always great shows, me and you.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. Love it. There we go. Now we're gonna see how smart or stupid we look with our power rankings and our picks there. But we live and we learn. We'll see. But man, this is an exciting year so far. Headed into week 4. Guys, everyone in the chat, thank you guys so much for being here. Got a lot of good games this weekend. So all watch them, check them out on the Game Pass, make your picks, put in your teams, and we will see you back here on Monday after a thrilling week of ELF football. Everybody, have a great night.
Thank you very much.